Here we are in the 2020s, and things are moving so quickly. I kind of hard to put your finger on why. There's been an acceleration of technology itself, better coding, but also I think the pandemic had a big impact. I think sort of what happened there was that learning escaped a bit. People tried to take the classroom and put it in a bunch of Zoom videos, people wait. Of course it didn't work, But actually what happened during the various lockdowns is that people carried on learning, and they learned with their grandfather, with their siblings, with their friends. They kind of like learning elsewhere. So the sort of walls around learning, we'd put it all conveniently in that box with that curriculum, with that pedagogy, job done, Suddenly it's everywhere, and it needs resilience and it needs partnerships. And if I think back over my, pretty long career at all this, very long, I can't think of anything that really worked well without the partnership of brave companies. And brave is a really important word here. People get locked into this is what we do, we're doing this. But actually, we're making learning happen, and we've got all this stuff, is a much more interesting perspective. And that's really what's drawn me to Peter, you and the ViewSonic crowd. It's a bunch of brave, crazy folk. And the world's changing. It's a bit as though that you've arrived at a station, and blow me down, the kids have all jumped on a train, the train's leaving, and we seem to be, half the folk, perhaps particularly some of our policymakers around the world, are saying, I'm just going to wait and hear where they're going, and then, but the brave people are jumping on the train with them. So I don't know where we're going, but this is exciting. Let's help them be their best selves. That's what we're doing together here. It's a funny old world, really. If I think about my jumper was probably made in Pakistan, my watch was made in Switzerland, shoes in I'd like to think Italy, but probably not. This wonderfully global world, and it's all interconnected in an exhilarating sort of way until we get to education, and we've got all these little sort of even the different national curriculum in Scotland to England to Wales, but actually we're all doing learning. And, kids don't see those barriers. They don't say, oh, that's my minister, he's telling me what to do. What they see is there's a bunch of kids I want to do learning with. They've got a duck-billed platypus, I want to see that. Up on I want to see a big one, And I think they're just naturally learning globally. And that's a big challenge, I think, for the way we used to manage learning. Those days have gone of, a national curriculum and the exams from this exam body and the textbook from here and the furniture from there. We just want to do learning as well as we can. And when I look around the world, there are people who've got bits of that. They're really good at it. And often they don't know how good they are at it. The quality of... We've been playing a lot with some of these screens and some of the software. It's not a hardware thing just anymore. We've been playing with the whole universe, which is extraordinary, really, because for a lot of children, the physical experience of learning has had some issues. So suddenly now you've got a community of purpose, and it's in the software. And the purpose is, how can I be my best self? How can I learn? Who's in my gang? What are we doing together? That's exhilarating. And it's the gene is not going to go back into the bottle. The kids aren't going to go back into the physical space alone. It's nice sometimes, nice to, nudge your friend, play paper darts, but it's also nice to be doing that on a global scale, and also nice to be doing it safely. So it's a really interesting. I'm just trying to count decades. I've been doing this for a few decades. This next decade is the most exciting any of us are ever going to see in our professional lives. Amazing. It's been fun working with the whole ViewSonic team, really, because there's a lot of stuff. And, maybe let's start with data. Children, teachers, ministers don't have very good data. If I walk into a Tesco superstore, big British supermarket, they're really interested in whether I'm smiling at the checkout. A little camera there to check, Because if everybody's scowling, something's got a bit wrong. I mean, if they're all laughing, something's gone a bit wrong too. But we've never known these sort of things before in education. We know that the quality of air in the room that you're in impacts hugely on your cognitive processes. The brain thrives on oxygen. And most classrooms are full of CO2 because the kids are sort of gassing themselves with their own emissions, And we know that plants can help with all that. But we haven't really got the data. I walk into classrooms, in one just this week, carpet tiles everywhere, and you can smell the solvents coming off the carpet. They'd be down for 4 years. But the volatile organic compounds are still flooding into. These things have a huge impact on our ability to learn. And suddenly, it actually matters that we've got technology that can capture my smiles, my movement. I'm old enough to have been told in school, sit up straight and don't fidget. That's the worst thing you can do for your brain because you slow down the blood flow around your body, the oxygen. It should be, get up and walk around, exercise, stretch a bit. You've got a test coming up. We haven't had the data to be able to make those decisions. Well, our teachers are ingenious. Our children are curious, but we need to arm them with information. The little sense boxes are the beginning of, a real revolution in all that. Now, we don't know what's perfect. I mean, clearly, if I'm teaching a geography lesson and nobody smiles all morning, something's a bit awry, And if they're all chuckling away, I've probably overdone it a bit. But where the needles, it doesn't matter. What's interesting is that in that question, as a learner, about my data and my learning, I'm triggering that metacognition. I'm learning about learning. I am a reflective practitioner. That in itself is an accelerator. And then at the trivial level, I talk to teachers, they say, I can't get the kids to come to my lesson on time. And I'd say, well, why would they? What's the incentive? Then, of course, when you start moving the room around and you start zoning, and I've got a space over there for, quiet research and contemplation. I'm practicing my presentation here. I'm doing some pure research over here. If I get there early, I've got choices. Sure, I've got a carousel of activities, but I get to choose. I want to be at the stand-up desk. I've been sitting down all freaking morning. If I get there early, I can be at the stand-up desk. So suddenly, when you give the kids choices, they arrive running to your class. And, of course, we've never had the data before about what time did they get there, what speed are they going in the corridor. That's all part of us making learning better and our children asking questions about how they can make their learning better. And it just seems to me that suddenly we've got the Internet of Things, we've got great sensors, we've got terrific visualization, we've got data, dashboards, we've got it all. It's time we started using it. That's some of the fun we've been having together. Absolutely. I've seen lots of skeptical teachers and head teachers. We just have 21,000 head teachers online in an online community, talking heads, And very often they were right. I mean, there's been a lot of mis-selling, there's been a lot of snake oil salesmen saying, you only need to do the blah, 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 and everything will be wonderful. So the first thing is, it's complicated. It's flipping complicated. I think every teacher knows that. It's not, that the craft of teaching is a complex thing. And I think anybody that tells you different says, you only need to sort out, the discipline or the temperature or the textbook. They're blind to the complexity of it, all complicated. So, first of all, I'd say trust your judgment. It is complex. But none of it's hard. None of the pieces are, there are tricky bits. If I'm a physicist trying to explain magnetism to a child, the child says, so what's the force field between my two magnets? You go, well, actually, quantum physics says it's light. Let's not get it. I mean, some of the knowledge is difficult, but the craft of teaching is complicated, but it ain't hard. And the more tools we've got, the easier it gets. So that's the first thing. The second thing, trust the kids. Trust the kids, trust the kids. People talk glibly about agency or co-construction, or let the learners lead. And I've never been in a learner-led project other than accelerated beyond where the learners were supposed to be. Hard data. When we gave the kids an assessment tool that was basically a Viva on the telephone, we asked every child to take all the learning outcomes they thought they could possibly achieve from the whole menu of learning outcomes, between then and 18 or whatever. They all picked learning outcomes that were tougher than they were supposed to achieve, and they all achieved them. So, kids given some autonomy, some agency, some skin in the game, get there quicker and get there further. And that really matters, Teachers are as exhausted as any other profession. The only one that's more exhausted probably would be nurses. And they're exhausted because they think they have to do everything. They don't. For example, noise. If you're interested in the decibel levels in your classroom, you stick a little thing up on the screen or look at your sentence dashboard, and there's the decibels in our classroom. By the way, kids, we know that when it gets above about 74 decibels, your brain's not working all that good. So try and keep it down. Now, they look at the numbers and they keep it down. Whereas when you've got to say, class, you're being a bit noisy, what does a bit noisy mean? Give them the data. And by the way, make 2 of them in charge of noise for today. And so it gets a bit, too near the top of the decibel range. Just go around and shush people down. We can do that with data. We can do that with our kids. And the last thing I'd say is, and I don't know any teacher who doesn't want their kids to be the best they can possibly be. And we don't know how good that is. We really don't. But we do know it's a flipping mile better than we've allowed them to be in the past. So let's go. Let's see how good the little blighters can really be. They're still going to be a bit naughty. They're still going to be a bit truculent, but I'll tell you what, there's a genius between the ears of every one of them. I think traditionally companies have focused in EdTech on the market they see in front of them, and they said things like, K through 12 or whatever. The reality of this is that the world has been overwhelmed wonderfully with a tsunami of learning. Learning is the coolest thing on the planet. Turn on my television, there are people learning to cook, learning to sew, learning woodwork. Everywhere I go, there's learning. TikTok is awash with people learning dodgy dances and goodness knows what else. But, we've never been so immersed in learning. And I think the exciting thing for an EdTech company is actually you kind of learn tech, and learning is for everybody. It's K through 99. It's kindergarten. What's that ghastly phrase the Americans use? Sperm to worm. It's a whole lifetime of learning. Ghastly. Certainly wouldn't use that in England. But that's where we are. And what I found, and so in Madrid, where we've said to our parents, we'll support you on any courses you want to do because we've got the technology to do it. We could do online learning. We can connect you to some of the best universities in the world and have a go. We'll support you with that. Well, the things they've come back with, nobody said, I want to do a course on being a parent, because you'll be good at that. But they've said, somebody in my company mentioned blockchain. I need to learn what that is. Or, I just want to learn a bit more about well-being. Or, I always wanted to be a midwife. Let's go, bring it on. And it turns out everybody wants to learn. And the more people that learn in those different groups, the more we get this acceleration multiplier effect, And flipping heck, we need all hands on deck. The world's gone to hell in a handcart. We need people who can solve problems. We need every single one of them. Every girl in Afghanistan, every pensioner in Worthing. We need them all busy using their brains, being the best they can be. For an EdTech company, you could not have a more important role than teaching the world to learn.